Fellow countrymen, it is the year 2999, the eve of the year 3000. Mother Earth is dying. Her hills in the valley, once filled with the beauteous sounds, now lay fallow and silent. Music has lost its muse. There's no singing, no dancing, no smiling, no individual styling, but there is hope. From across the universe, a rebel band of outcasts has arrived, bringing with them the hopes and dreams of a new generation. A generation imbued with the spirit of song and the true rhythm of life. One can only hope that their arrival will signal the dawn.
The natives are definitely restless.
1, 2, 3. My baby don't mess around because she loves me so, and this I know for sure. But does she really wanna? But can't stand to see me walk out the door. Don't try to fight the feeling, 'cause the thought alone is killing me right now. Thank God for my...
Howdy, folks. Your host, Double J, back here, coming at you live from my studio/RV dining room, located directly outside the city of Little Port-au-Prince, Ohio, formerly known as Springfield, Ohio. Now, folks, I will be your pilot and navigator for this shenanigan-infused journey into the mind of this particular garbage can dude. And joining us here at some point in time, my co-host, Nick, from the Occult Rejects, will be also joining us, but tonight we got a guest here, Ryder Lee, talking ancient alien cargo cults. And, perfect timing as well, as we've been working on this show for a few weeks, getting this together. We planned it in advance a few weeks ago, to the point where great timing with us current UFO, flap of drones and other weird activity going on in the skies. Something Ryder's done a lot of research and study into these subjects, and where these two intersect, actually, these alien psyops and the ancient alien cargo cults, and the potential occult surroundings of some of those intersections. So some stuff Ryder's well versed in, and a lot of stuff we've been talking about here on Operation GCD. But Ryder, I appreciate your time, bud. Welcome to Operation GCD.
Thank you very much for having me on. Really appreciate it. We got a lot to talk about. I mean, we can get in, take us so many different directions. And we talked before we started the show, and you were familiar with the work that I've done on a lot of these UFO cults. I have a whole series of them on my YouTube channel. There's a playlist on there called UFO Doomsday Cults, and
that's the Raised by Giants show you got there on YouTube and all podcast platforms too, it seems, right?
Yes, sir. You can find it on Raised by Giants on YouTube and anywhere that you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find the show. Just type in Raised by Giants.
I put your link tree in the show notes as well there for you, bud. So
thank you very much.
Ryder's UFO Doomsday Cult series, I highly recommend it. We'll just be touching some of the surface level of some of those things. I've listened to that series. It's a fantastic series.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I put a lot of work into it. So I really hope people hope that blows up later on. You know what I mean? And people will realize all the gems that are in there.
There's a gaining interest in the topic, I think, right? I mean, I think more and more people are looking to the skies and are having some questions. So I think that's going to turn some interest that way. And as I said, I've been doing some ancient alien cargo cult discussions here and relative, not just the cargo cult kind of philosophies, but some of the cult members' activities. For example, the introduction we heard from Outcast. Well, they're apparently what's considered one of the quote unquote New Wabian millionaires, according to the public relations folks from the New Wabian Nation, which was an ancient alien cargo cult, black nationalist cargo cult, mound builders. They were the descendants from ancient Egyptians. Dwight York, the cult leader, that was their philosophies. They built a huge 450-acre ancient Egyptian city on mounds in Georgia, sphinxes, pyramids, complete with a nightclub in the pyramid, because Dwight York is kind of the inventor of hip-hop music. So a lot of hip-hop artists, pay homage to him in their lyrics. Jay-Z pays homage to him for starting his career. Jay-Z's first music video was shot at the New Wabian Nation Center in Brooklyn, New York. So
we'll see how that's turning out for Jay-Z right now. He's being sued along with Diddy as well, and that's
you beat me to the punch there, Ryder. Because let's say Jay-Z might be meeting his friend Dwight York soon. Dwight York's sitting in Florence Supermax prison for the next 150 years for kid diddling and child sex trafficking. So him and Jay-Z might be seeing each other soon there in Florence.
Absolutely, and that reminds me of this cult called the Raelian cult. I think it was episode 4 of my Doomsday Cult series, and it all revolves around this guy named Ryder, and he essentially bought all this property in Canada, and he made this. It was basically a sex cult, a UFO sex cult. He would, have these ladies dance in front of him, and then he would pick out the best woman and have sex with them that night. And it was like for like royalty. It was like these women, and he said that he was training these women for the Elohim, so to be essentially their slaves whenever the Elohim land on Earth in 2035 and give us all of their robots and all their technology and their cloning technology. And he also started this company in Canada called Clonaid, where he supposedly cloned the human beings. And in 2002,
in Congress, right?
About
that, right? The cloning.
100%. They said that it was all real, and they cloned the first person, and her name was Eve, and now she lives somewhere in Israel. Imagine that. And no one can, no scientist has ever been able to examine her to see if she was clone and all that. And then supposedly the story goes is he was on this mountain range and saw an Elohim ship, and the Elohim came and picked him up and took him into space and took him to their home planet, where they gave him a bunch of these sex robots that he can have sex with. And that's where he got the idea to start this cloning company. But
they're always sex cults, aren't they? Every time, always sex cults.
The leaders got to be having sex with all of everyone that they can possibly get their hands on. And what reminded me of, you're talking about this, where they built a lot of this acreage and all this stuff. Well, apparently the Rael, they need to get donations and a lot of money in order to build this Elohim landing pad for the extraterrestrial Elohim to land in 2035. And if they haven't built the proper landing pad for the Elohim, then they're not going to show up and share their sex robots with humanity.
Oh, that's going to be a real bummer. I hope we don't miss out on that. Was it the Raelians? That's the swastika symbol that Kanye tweeted out, right? And got him banned from Twitter.
That's the one.
Yeah. Interesting group, those Raelians.
Yeah, it's like a swastika inside of a Star of David, which
that's right. Yeah, that's
doesn't
right.
Make a lot of sense, but
very unique symbol.
Yeah,
Stands
and I think
out
it's the backwards one too. So it's not, or it could be the one that the Nazis use. I would have to look up a picture again, because we know that the swastika that the Nazis used were completely different than what the original swastika.
Like the Hindu swastika, or the Native American swastika, for that matter. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point, because there's another stylized swastika of a group that I often like to highlight in their activities in this world, and it's kind of the intersection of what I think is these UFO or ancient alien cargo cults and modern day Satanism, and that's a group like the Process Church of the Final Judgment, an offshoot of Scientology, which is in a sense an offshoot there of the OTO. But the Process uses the swastika as their symbol, and they have a very ancient alien cargo cult theology where they have the Watchers, which are these sort of disembodied spirits that live somewhere in space. I mean, to me, they seem obviously like demons, but that's kind of how I look at a lot of the subjects, quite honestly.
Yeah, they all have like a weird mixing of theology and mysticism mixed up in there with them. But whenever you get down to the fine details of like all these cults going back from the early 30s with the cult of I Am that we were mentioning earlier, whereas literally all of these New Age beliefs all stem from the cult of I Am with Guy and Edna Ballard within the United States. And then that created all of these different offshoots of all these cults, but it really started to hit hardcore around the early 50s. You had all of these UFO cults and these cults really popping up around the 50s, and that is the exact time that the CIA started their MK Ultra programs, like within a year range.
Right.
Like
Very convenient timing, yeah, with Scientology there as well, right? As
super
far as,
convenient.
because it's obviously not just the CIA, like probably Office of Navy Intelligence, Air Force Intelligence doing their program. Air Force really got into the MK Ultra stuff heavy, I believe.
Yes, they did.
They were some of the they really loved that stuff, didn't they?
Yeah, they were the most interested in it out of all the agencies, and we can only wonder why they were the most interested in it,
Right.
because, and then you look at all the sightings of UFOs over the years since 1947.
Yep.
And you'll get a big reason why that they would be interested in using MK Ultra. I mean, the whole Men in Black story is very reminiscent of like an operation, right? Like if you put something in the sky, you put something out there, and then you let people see it, and then you go and ask them questions about what they've seen. That's like a follow-up to an operation. That's what you would do in an operation. You would essentially sort of fabricate this event, and then the people that witnessed the event, you would go to them and then ask them exactly what it is, what they saw, and there would be like a perception test, because some people would claim that they would see one thing and other people would claim that they've seen another, and that's a common thread throughout these UFO sightings and even abduction sightings, like the Manhattan alien abduction documentary that's on Netflix that just came out, which I'm a huge fan of. I loved that documentary.
Which one is this? Which abduction case is this? I'm not familiar.
It's the Manhattan alien abduction case that involves Bud Hopkins, which I did a whole show on Bud Hopkins using regression therapy to regress people back to when they think that they've been abducted by aliens, which is just a huge, big farce. You know, because you have the ability to implant thoughts into people's heads when it comes to regression. I mean, regression does serve a really good therapeutic sense. It's actually supposed to help you with like addictions and like quitting smoking and like alcoholism and stuff. That's what regression is originally supposed to be for. It's not for figuring out if you've been abducted by aliens or not.
Right. New habit forming stuff, not alien implants and whatnot. Sure.
But Guy Ballard, the originator of this cult of I Am, was also a hypnotherapist. See, a lot of these runners of these cults, like the cult of Universal Medicine out of Australia, he was also a hypnotist.
Yeah.
The Ground Crew cult, that guy was also a hypnotist. So it's like, you know, is it just a coincidence that these people are also hypnotherapists that are running these freaking cults?
That's a great point, because in relative to some of the process discussions I've had here on Operation GCD, touch base a little bit, and some other process researchers have identified these hypnotists that are all surrounding the Manson situation, and some of which are very U.S. Navy spooky type of characters that no one really talks about.
Yeah, and then there's evidence pointing to the fact that the CIA was the actual people that taught Manson how to hypnotize people using drugs.
Sure. yeah, I think that's kind of a lot of the big secret around him is that these programs are still being used for a lot of other functions, not just specifically that one. They have more of a general use of drugging and hypnotizing people to get them to do whatever, you know, means necessary, right? But yeah, I think I think we you know, kind of what your point was of the 1950s, the onset of a lot of these UFO doomsday cults or ancient alien cargo cults, is the we now live in an era of which these cults, in my opinion, have literally taken over politics and society, right? To the point where there's numerous instances where they intersect within the upper echelon of American politics, but also other nations' politics, including like Mexico, who had numerous children of former presidents of Mexico high up in the Nexium cult, for example. So, you know, there's a lot of these cults that have intersected the upper echelons of politics. And I really think we just live in this whole culture where these things have taken over. I use the image of C-3PO from Return of the Jedi as the image and the cover art for tonight's show, because that's kind of, I get a lot of questions of like, what is an ancient alien cargo cult? And that's kind of a, you know, it's kind of a depiction of what an ancient alien cargo cult is, where the Ewoks there and have discovered C-3PO and they think he's a god, and then they create this whole veneration of him, right?
Yeah, that's a perfect example, and that's Return of the Jedi, right?
That's Return of the Jedi, and again, it's existing in a galaxy far, far away, in a time long ago, far, far away. So it's literally in the credits, the opening credits, they tell you it's an ancient alien, storyline, right? It's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So that is the story of ancient aliens, right there. You look at Scientology; they have a story of a tale of long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. They just don't call it Star Wars. They call it, Xenoism, if you will.
Yeah, and that's the thing about a lot of these cults too, is like they always change up their doctrine whenever people start catching on that their cult is full of shit. And they always, try and backtrack on it and change exactly what's going on when things start to not pan out. And they all copy off of each other as well. Like the Seekers UFO cult from 1954, which no one ever really even heard of until I started talking about it. And then it was actually on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix recently where they talked about it. And I was like, where did they get this from? But anyway, the cult in 1954.
Where was the Seekers? I'm not familiar with these guys. The Seekers are.
This was a cult also out of Chicago. Just how the cult of I Am is also out of Chicago as well, and it was established in I think around December of 1954, which a lot of them came up in 1954. You also had the
right after NASA's created, right?
Yes, and the Air Force is doing their test of running the test for NASA until NASA completely took that over. But it really revolves around this lady called Dorothy Martin, and she basically told her cult that her followers of this cult that the United States was going to be essentially destroyed by a gigantic earthquake and a huge tidal wave. See, that's another thing that these cults use, like nothing but fear, which you can see that within this community as well. Like people use the fear narrative to get people to buy things. And that's another one that the mainstream media also uses is fear. Like you got to protect yourself in case of a giant disaster or whatever. So Dorothy Martin had her
into it, right?
Always apocalyptic spin, and that comes from Christianity, of course, in the Book of Revelation. And that's why the entire cult of the Waco cult with Dave Koresh or Koresh. I get those confused because they're very similar to the UFO whistleblower. That is also sounds like David Koresh is the Waco leader, and then you have David Grush, which is the UFO whistleblower that testified in front of Congress, which is very similar in their name structure and the way that you say their names. And I don't think anyone really caught on to that. But I just had the Waco, the gentleman that survived Waco on my show. Right before that, so I was like, wow, this guy sounds the exact same title of David Thibodeau was the guy that survived Waco that came on my show. He was at Waco and he was inside the building when it was being burnt down. Wow. And him and I believe 11 other people were the only survivors of that entire incident. But anyway, Dorothy Martin, she convinced her entire following group that this huge natural disaster was going to happen and this tidal wave was going to come in and destroy the entire United States. And she got this information, of course, from telepathic communication from aliens, that which she calls the Guardians, which then later gets regurgitated with Ashiana Dean's work with the Guardian races and the DNA strands and the 12-strand DNA that she wrote several books on later on in the 90s. It all comes back full circle, and a lot of it starts with these UFO cults. And the believers and the followers of this cult, they thought that they were going to be saved by these massive UFOs that were going to come down, called the Guardian races UFOs. And they said that it was going to happen on December 21st, 1954. And then when that didn't happen, they pushed the date back, and then they just kept pushing the date back until everyone just lost interest. But there was this gentleman that infiltrated in the cult called Leon Fetzinger, which was a psychologist, and he infiltrated into the Seekers cult with a goal of trying to study their psychological they're essentially their coping mechanisms of when their beliefs failed. Whenever they would say that this was going to happen on this certain date, then how would they justify the reason why that thing didn't happen? And Leon
when the
Fetzinger,
apocalypse didn't come, right? Which seems to be an ongoing trend, that even though the apocalypse never come with these cults, a contingent of the cults still seems to stick around with a new leader, right? With a new date.
And Leon Fetzinger, exactly. And then they try and switch it up, and they try and cover their asses and use some kind of wacky, stupid explanation as to why the aliens didn't show up, like that their spaceship broke down, or that they met such secretly with the government and they didn't do it publicly, and things are going to change, blah, 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 blah. And it just keeps going on and on and on. But a little well-known thing that people, not well-known thing, sorry, that people did not know about this cult was this cult is where the term cognitive dissonance actually originated from. It originated from this psychiatrist, a psychologist, that infiltrated into the cult and studied these members whenever their predictions failed, and he developed the term cognitive dissonance. And that was also talked about in the documentary. So those people on Netflix, those people had to have watched my show on this this cult, because I did it a year before this cult even came out. I mean, this documentary even came out.
That's a good nod to your research, then, isn't it?
And this Leon Fetzinger guy that created the term cognitive dissonance is so interesting, because that's what people within the UFO community call people that don't believe in UFOs and don't believe in aliens. Oh, well, they got cognitive dissonance. They just can't wrap their minds around when the term was actually first developed and came to fruition from those people that believed in UFOs and aliens. It's like a switcheroo.
Sure. That's I'm gonna have to look more into that. That's an interesting cult there. I'm not especially with the origins of the cognitive dissonance term, like you said, is so commonly used today. I like your point, though. You also made there, Ryder, about the derivative nature of these cults. And I don't know that you covered Heaven's Gate in your series, but I'm sure you've come across Heaven's Gate.
Yes, I did cover Heaven's Gate. Yes.
Okay, well, maybe I missed that one then. But yeah, so what were some of your thoughts here? Because they were a really unique one. It seemed like they had some strange government IT contracts, it seemed, but just the origin story. They came from basically a mental institution, right, in Texas.
Yeah, supposedly the Marshall Applewhite was, there's so many conflicting statements of how he met Bonnie Nettles. Some say that they met together at a hospital when Marshall Applewhite was going to check up on a friend at a hospital, and she was a nurse there. And then others say that he was locked up in a mental hospital, and that's how they met. But Bonnie Nettles basically influenced him into a lot of these belief structures. And essentially what Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles did in the beginning is they traveled around to all of these spiritual centers and all these new age alternative belief systems in the United States, and a lot of these centers and like Buddhist temples, and like talked with all these people so that they can form their guidelines of how they wanted to structure their cult. And to get their
so is that your take on man interject real quick there, Ryder? So was that kind of your take what they were doing with these different, because I did notice that. So they did go to these strange, they went from Texas and they hightailed it. Their first stop was Oregon on their route to understand cults and recruit folks. And I found it like that to be a very unique story. That do you recall the town in Oregon that they went to? Because I don't recall.
I'm not 100% sure on the exact town in Oregon, but supposedly that was their very first meeting, and they were handing out flyers around Oregon, and they were told to meet at this event center, and then they would and people that went to that original first meeting in Oregon. Like many people have said that it was like walking in and meeting Jesus Christ.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, it was very beneficial for Applewhite. I mean, yeah. So I guess that town that they went to was a cult from the 1930s that was banished to that town. I believe they were originally in Corvallis, and then it was the Holy Rollers. And the interesting thing, as far as these derivative natures of these cults and stuff, I think that was a great explanation, because they did, for some reason, if you look at Marshall Applewhite, the last thing I think of is Jesus, right? So whatever he put on in that hotel that night, he had some magic going on. But when they redid part of my series I do here on Operation GCD is look at the grunge counterculture, comparing it to Dave McGowan's treatment of Laurel Canyon. And when I was researching Seattle's Pike Place at one point in time, a number of years ago, I saw that the Heaven's Gate cult had bought one of those bricks that they do when they like to raise money in restoration of like a city area or whatnot, rehabilitation and whatnot. So they were redoing Pike's Place and they were selling these bricks. You could donate money and get your name on a brick. The Heaven's Gate folks bought a brick on the site where the Holy Rollers cult leader was murdered 70 years prior or whatever, 60 years prior, that is the cult that lives in that Oregon town that they recruited. So this weird derivative kind of cult network nature, I don't understand it, but all these cults seem to know who to talk to, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, they would probably know that by traveling around and getting within these inner circles of this whole thing. And the Heaven's Gate thing really started to fall apart whenever Bonnie Nettles died and she got brain cancer and she didn't ascend into the fifth dimension to be transformed into an extraterrestrial by the into the next evolutionary level above human, right? Because that's what their entire belief system revolved around, was that this time was going to come where they were going to be raptured up, which is exactly like the Book of Revelation in Christianity. Christians believe that a rapture is coming. It's all based around, it all has ties in Christianity, and that's what the I Am cult was also about. Well, it had all of its roots and all of its ideology based in Christianity, and it was a patriotism cult. It was, because Saint Germain was the one that influenced, the nation state and helped write the Declaration of Independence and like all the stuff. So then it becomes a patriotic thing, and then it's giving people a little bit of taste of something familiar that they can kind of sink their teeth in while taking it in a semi-new direction. And that's what a lot of these cult members talk about within that, previously were in these types of cults. They were like, the reason that I was so drawn to it is because I had never heard anything like it before. But really where all these cults got all their beliefs and their ideologies is ripping off all these people that came before them.
Sure. Now, I like how you put it in your UFO series. You call it a cult burrito.
Yes, cult burrito, the classic cult burrito.
I like that.
Nick, did you get sucked into the OTO through some of these similar style tactics?
No, to tell you the truth, I think they're more specific ideas that they have. I wouldn't say they have a lot of them. Actually, probably pushed me away from it even more.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, no. It was just honestly the OTO again. Like I said, it was the only order around me that fucked with magic openly as soon as you walked in the door. Right. And between that and knowing that it was so like eclectic with different types of practices, I knew I'd be able to probably run into somebody that might be interesting or I could learn from. Multiple people. Sure. But no, like their specific stuff is just like a little bit. I'll tell you, totally honestly, a little bit too much for me.
Welcome to the show. We're just getting ready to talk some UFO psyops from your neck of the woods, your old neck of the woods.
In New York?
New Jersey. Yeah, I mean the whole. I don't know if you've seen some of the images. Like I watched a News Nation clip earlier. They had some radar images. There's drones literally all across New Jersey right now for some reason.
And that's the thing, they're saying that they just disappear and then like they go dark. That's a direct quote from a lot of these people, that they just go dark. Well, what does going dark mean? Like, does it mean that they just turn the lights are just being turned off, or like what? Right. Like what? Why couldn't you not see this on a thermal imaging camera? Or the military has freaking military grade night vision goggles. I mean, I've used them. Oh yeah, I've used them at UFO conferences. Like, you're telling me that people can, like civilians can get these military grade night vision goggles, but the military doesn't have military grade night vision goggles?
Oh,
give me a break.
I can assure you, Ryder. Yeah, they do for sure. They have something called shortwave infrared, which is different from the heat signature infrared. Shortwave infrared basically just detects mass, any object with mass, so you can see through any fog, any smoke for miles with the shortwave infrared. So,
and then they don't know what they are, but yet they call them drones. It doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, hey, yeah, these are a bunch of drones, but we don't know what they are. You just said what they were. You just said that they were drones. Like, how stupid do they think that we are? They literally think, these people think that we're the dumbest people on the planet.
Yeah, because this whole, Nick, as I was explaining to the folks of the interwebs, Ryder and I were originally planned this show, scheduled a couple weeks ago before all this current drone and quote unquote UAP, UFO, whatever they're calling these days, flap But yeah, I mean, it's literally everywhere. And the way that folks are acting about it just seems overtly ignorant, because it went from, yeah, they're drones, to what drones are you talking about, to now Ryder's got a clip here. They're manned vehicles.
Yeah, we had a White House representative yesterday come out and say that they're manned aircraft. So, like, what are they?
Yeah, I hadn't
Are they
heard that
from
one.
Iran? Is it a mothership from Iran? Is it aliens? Is it UFOs? Is it UAPs? Is it freaking manned aircraft? Like, how can this be happening for so long and then they have no idea what it is? It makes zero sense. How's it going, Nick? Sorry I didn't
It's okay.
speak to you. How's it going, brother? Good to see you. I love your shirt, bro.
Thank you. I had to wear it for today.
The Jason for Christmas, bro.
It's actually the 13th live episode of Operation GCD Live here on Friday the 13th.
Oh, hell yeah. That's why I did it up. All right, awesome.
This is another good point, though. Yeah, why would these things need lights? It seems like they want to be seen by having these various multicolored lights, for sure. It seems the whole mess of it doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, let me pull up this clip here you brought, Ryder, because it's a good indicator of what's going on here with some of this nonsense about these drones or whatever they're supposed to be.
Okay, here we go.
I just want to add a few comments on the reports of drone activity here on the East Coast, particularly in and around New Jersey. We have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or a public safety threat, or have a foreign nexus. The Department of Homeland Security and the FBI are investigating these sightings, and they're working closely with state and local law enforcement to provide resources using numerous detection methods to better understand their origin. Using very sophisticated electronic detection technologies provided by federal authorities, we have not been able to, and neither have state or local law enforcement authorities, corroborate any of the reported visual sightings.
See, this is really strange that what he just said, that it almost sounds like they're denying that they're even there.
Exactly, yeah. They're like, we can't corroborate it. Well, what does that even mean? It's such a legalese way to approach the situation.
But then he goes on to say, in the rest of this, it's only got about 20 more seconds left. Then he goes on to say that, we'll just listen to it.
To the contrary, upon review of available imagery, it appears that many of the reported sightings are actually manned aircraft that are being operated lawfully.
So he says that we can't corroborate any of the video footage from anything that was taken, but it appears that they're manned aircraft. So which is it? Like, I don't.
Yeah,
it's the most ridiculous doublespeak that I've ever heard.
United States Coast Guard is providing support to the state of New Jersey and has confirmed that there is no evidence of any foreign-based involvement from coastal vessels. And importantly, there are no reported or confirmed drone sightings in any restricted airspace.
Which is completely opposite to what they originally said. They said that it was, they were in restricted airspace. And,
sure.
It's so crazy, dude. It's so crazy.
There's been numerous reports of Langley Air Force Base. I know, in fact, Germany, a number of Air Force bases in Germany just today had some drone reports. So there's been a number of military installations. Edgewood Arsenal, and they're in not Edgewood, Redstone Arsenal, I believe. Whatever Army weapons depot there is in New Jersey that I can't currently think of.
Wasn't Edgewood some of the first experimental ultra programs?
Exactly, that's their in Maryland. Yep.
Good old Edgewood, all the Army volunteers.
Where Frank Zappa grew up, and Frank Zappa was a member of the Church of Subgenius, a UFO cult, right?
Oh my God, the Church of Subgenius. That's such a wild one. I covered that one as well. That one was wild. It was obviously, it seemed like a parody cult, like that they were, because everything that their excuses, like for why none of the stuff happened, it was just like so ridiculous. I'm like, how could anybody believe this stuff? It seemed to me to be like a parody cult.
They definitely come off as a parody cult for sure, but they definitely also, like, they seem to have some actual belief system to them. I mean, to me, they come off a lot Discordian, but even the Discordians, I think, have a pretty strong belief system for claiming not to be a religion. Praise Bob, as they're saying, right, within the Church Subgenius.
Yeah, praise Bob.
Bob Dobbs.
Yeah, good old Bob Dobbs. That they actually got the photo out of the back of a freaking yellow phone book and found it in the back pages, and then cut it out and made the made the version of that Bob smoking the cigar.
The characterized version of Bob. Yeah. He, well, that image, it's funny you mentioned that because that image is, and the impact of this cult has gone pretty far. Not only Frank Zappa, but that image was used on the Sublime 40 Ounce to Freedom album.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't realize that.
That's that Bob Dobbs image. Yeah, other folks
Bob
like
Dobbs.
Pee Wee Herman, I believe, was a member. Maybe the lead singer of Devo, I've read, was a member of these folks. So maybe,
Who was sorry?
Across the spectrum kind of society, I guess.
Yeah, that's I was trying to.
Oh, maybe I was thinking of the wrong guy. David Byrne of Talking Heads. Maybe that's what I was thinking of instead of Devo. Thank you.
Yeah.
Get my 80s bands mixed up.
Easy to do.
Yeah, Robert Anton Wilson was a part of the Church of Subgenius. So one thing that really interests me with the Church of Subgenius, Nick, are you familiar with these folks, the Church of the Subgenius?
Not at all. No, not at all.
So they do a lot of recruiting, it seems, within they have a very mysterious kind of background, right? Bob Dobbs is this kind of character that may exist or may not exist in our own timeline, right? Ryder, is that kind of the story there? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, it's basically right. It's like basically a fictionalized, propped up character that they've kind of created, and then they gave him like a giant backstory behind them and created all this mythology surrounding them. And one of the funniest things about this cult was these UFOs were supposed to show up at a certain time and a certain date, and like they had this manuscript that was written from Bob Dobbs that only the heads of the cult could read, and then they went out and it was supposed to be on this certain date because Bob Dobbs apparently wrote out a calendar of when the aliens were going to show up. So they're all standing out in this field, and then the aliens didn't show up, and they said that they mistakenly read the calendar wrong and they were reading the calendar upside down. So that's the reason why it didn't happen on that date. That was one of the funniest cover-ups of why the aliens didn't show up.
If people can't realize they're looking at something upside down, I don't want them to tell me anything else.
Right. Yeah, you just
right. Like I'm gonna fucking take my life. Put my life in your hands now. Fuck out of here.
Right. Yeah. Well, and another interesting thing I find interesting is Bob Dobbs allegedly gets his messages, takes orders from an alien named Ion, I-O-N, and through some sort of channeling procedures, right? I believe that's how the story goes. In fact, there's a website called Ion and Bob, which kind of highlights this relationship. Not a very creative name. It is very descriptive of what you'll find there. And one thing that interests me with this is the intersection between characters like this, Robert Anton Wilson included, being a member of the Church of the...
Oh, we lose him?
Did he freeze? He froze.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Dang, Nick, it's your time to shine, baby. Get it.
Yeah, right. I just had something in my mind, too, that I wanted to ask, and it just totally threw me off now, and the whole thought escaped me. Fuck.
Yep, back. Yeah, what I was saying was the intersection between these UFO, ancient alien cargo cults and conspiracy culture, right? Robert Anton Wilson is this major conspiracy culture figure. I mean, he's populated a lot of the modern day mythos surrounding the Illuminati and a number of other, number of other topics. But notably, Bob Dobbs was very close with Mae Brussel, who's this, kind of the queen of conspiracy culture. In fact, you'll find Bob Dobbs and Ion and Bob.com, and I'll put a link in the show notes for folks of the interwebs. You'll see Bob Dobbs is there at Mae Brussel's funeral in 1988.
Well, there's so much overlap between the beliefs of these cults, especially when it comes to the cult of IM in the early 30s. Like if you just, replaced Guy and Edna Ballard with Trump and JFK Jr., you essentially have the QAnon cult. Like it's the exact verbatim, the exact same thing.
That's interesting you point that out because isn't there some associations with the QAnon movement and the IM cult and members of the IM cult?
Well, everything that they talk about is basically like the exact same thing. Like the cult of IM talked about how Saint Germain was going to come back and then he was going to restore the gold standard to the Federal Reserve, and that the Saint Germain's trust was going to be distributed to everyone evenly, just like the QAnon cult talks about Nasara Jasara. and how
Sure.
we have all this money, and then like when all this stuff happens, everyone's going to get millions of dollars in their bank account and all that. So it's like verbatim, like almost the exact same thing. You just switch up some characters in there. And also the Cult of I Am had many spiritual things that are talked about to this very day. They came up with the idea of twin rays, which is this, love connection between the somebody, like you're incarnated on, like someone's incarnated and then your other self is incarnated. And when you come together, you're complete and all that, which is
Like
now what is called twin flames. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like that's just an
Twin
excuse to
flame.
keep having an unhealthy relationship go longer than it has to.
Is that
That's
what
all
that
it is.
And then there's actually a twin flame cult too.
Yeah, I
No.
saw that shit. They were fucking crazy.
I didn't do a show on it, but I learned about it and read
Sure.
up about it. Yeah.
It's-
Where they'll literally set up these people together and like make them do all this like
They'll tell them
weird.
that they're each other's twin flames, even if they had no.
Oh, really? I see what you're saying. They're convincing they're destined to be with one another. Well, that's what these cults do, right? They kind of they force members to marry each other, and it seems like the actual idea of marriage is very fluid with a lot of these cults, including even Scientology, where they're just they're these ancient aliens stuck in these human bodies, so these marriages are very temporal. They don't they don't have to take them very seriously, so they're often discarding one spouse for another spouse within the cult.
Yeah, like the Occult Examiner's comment here, twin flames came from the god of the Gnostics, which the thing about these cults is it doesn't matter who created it first, because they all copy off of each other. It matters who popularized the idea. And the I Am cult was very popular. They would make millions and millions of dollars. They actually got sued in court for mail fraud, because they would send in these pamphlets to people and promise them all this stuff like spiritual ascension. Like Guy Ballard had apparently had like this golden chair that you could sit down in and you would ascend to the fifth dimension and like all this stuff. And they would send in these pamphlets like in people's mailboxes in order to, entice people to send them money, to like send them donations in the mail. And then eventually all these people, after being scammed for a lot of years, they ended up suing them back for millions of dollars and all the money that they lost. So it doesn't
Very
even
common amongst the Scientology crowd too, right? Once they break free, they want to get all that money back, so they start suing them.
Yeah,
Seems
where
to
do
be a
all my
common
money go?
structure.
What do you mean? What do you mean my money went to you living a luxurious life and having
Right.
25 cars and living in a mansion?
Or in Scientology's cases, they start building things called like the superpower building, where you're supposed to be able to go there and learn superpowers. Like you're a Marvel Comics character or something.
Superpowers is a big thing, dude. Like they want to
Yeah.
be able to learn how to be psychic. They want to get all these mystical abilities, and and that's what a lot of these cults and these leaders of these cults promise their followers, and none of it ever happens. I mean, that's what the Heaven's Gate cult was telling their followers, to just go out into a field and hold your arms up for freaking ever and wait for the UFOs to come
That's
to
what I was
rescue
going to say.
you, and will send you up into the sky. So they just had people randomly out there with camping around a fire out there waiting for UFOs. And they didn't say, oh, well, they're definitely going to come. They say, if you go out there enough, they'll show up. We don't know when. It might be tomorrow, it might be next week, next month, next year, 10 years, but you just got to keep doing it.
And that same attitude is permeated again, as you pointed out, number of examples of this derivative nature of these cults. Because then you have folks like Steven Greer, who's kind of at the epicenter, I think, of this alien. Nick's like, no, not that guy.
Don't get me going.
Psyop and cargo cult stuff. Because you have Aaron Rodgers, one of the biggest sports figures, going on one of the biggest sports shows, Pat McAfee, I believe yesterday or today, talking about how he was going to go spend tonight with some lasers, because he's in New Jersey with the Jets. He's going to go spend some tonight with some lasers and meditate, trying to contact these UFOs and drones flying over New Jersey using Steven Greer's CE5 method.
Wow.
Yeah, see, all you got to do, it's transferred and it's turned into something different now. Like back then, it was like through the mail. It was like, send me money and I'll grant you. You'll send into the fifth dimension, next evolutionary level above human, and be transformed into an extraterrestrial from UFOs. And now it's download my app for $9.99 and go out into a field with your friends and contact aliens.
Right.
It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, because that's what it
It's
is,
a
right?
scam.
CE5 is just kind of like you just go out there and you think about it. Maybe is that? I think that's what Steven Greer's kind of.
You're supposed to somehow communicate with the UFOs, the aliens that are inside the UFOs. You're supposed to telepathically send them your coordinate of exactly where you are on the earth, and somehow they receive that message, and then they show up in their craft.
Sounds almost like magic, doesn't it? Sounds very occult, ritualistic style, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think this is just my opinion. I think Steven Greer is using those people to do something else. I don't want to be too about it, but I think anything in the skies, it's due to him and a few other people there.
Well, you got to look who funded him, right? Then you got people like Lawrence Rockefeller, I'm sure Ryder's picked up on a number of alien projects he's financed over the years, besides just Steven Greer.
Yeah, he's a scam artist, I think. I hate to say it.
Who's that? Greer?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Well, is that correct, right? Lawrence Rockefeller was a big financier of a lot of these activities for many years. I mean, he's passed now, but Greer was a recipient of a lot of money from him. I believe there were some other characters as well.
Well, it's so interesting because so many of these people are getting funding from private organizations and private funders that we'll never really know about, that have passed away. And then, like, you know, where do they even get their money? I mean, Steven Greer was said that he was like what did he say? He was an emergency doctor or whatever. And then he, like, in the beginning, he's showing up with all these like bodyguards. He has like a giant entourage like around him of like 10 people, and he's showing up in like black SUVs and stuff. And all of a sudden he's got all this money and he's wearing these super fancy watches and stuff. Like, bro, like, you're telling me you're making all this money off of this freaking app that you made for people to contact UFOs and aliens?
Yeah, I think he kind of erupted out of that same scene of like people like Linda Moulton Howe, maybe again with some of that financing from
a cat lady. She looks like a Catwoman now. So much work done to her face. She looks deformed.
But there's more people that are on the forefront of this financing. I think with folks like Christopher Mellon, right? He's big. He's been big in the intelligence, the Mellon banking family, but very influential in the defense intelligence aspects of these programs. Is that an accurate statement?
Well, a lot of these people are funded by directly or indirectly by the government or somebody from the government. Sure. And the whole thing is I personally believe, is to try and dissuade people from all this stuff being like extraterrestrial craft, just as we've seen these craft over in New Jersey. Like, they're now calling them drones. They didn't come out and say that they're unidentified flying objects or they're UAPs. I think that this is actually a push because they let the genie out of the bottle with all the mis and disinformation surrounding UFOs and extraterrestrials, which comes directly from the government. All of the theories that you've heard about aliens and UFOs came directly from the government, from the NSA and from the Air Force, running psychological operations on Paul Benowitz, which then spread out across all of ufology. And those stories
he was very big in the seeding of a lot of these ideas, wasn't he, Paul Benowitz?
Pretty much all of them. Every single one that you can possibly think of off the top of your head came from Paul Benowitz.
Yeah, and that was kind of what Richard Doty and some of the OSI guys were kind of feeding him, right?
Yeah, the real person the real group of people that were actually in charge of that really wasn't even the Air Force. It was the NSA. They were the ones that were really responsible for all the mis and disinformation surrounding Paul Benowitz, because they broke into his home, replaced his computer with an NSA modified computer to make him believe that he's in communication through his laptop or through his computer at the time with extraterrestrial aliens. And he was decoding all these messages to that they were telling them that he was the chosen one and that they'll only communicate with him and that they're here for Earth's resources and that they've signed a contract with the government to build these bases. And that's where all the mythology of the Dulce base in New Mexico all comes out of, with Phil Schneider. And then Bill Cooper runs with all these stories. And then you get the whole contract with aliens and extraterrestrials all thrown in there, which also came from Paul Benowitz, which then later Bill Cooper turned into a contract with aliens and Eisenhower. It's all a psychological operation.
Sure.
Phil Schneider. That was
a great synopsis of like 30 about about 30 years of psychological operations right there.
Yeah, I crammed it in really quickly because I've talked about it so much, but
That was good.
good summary.
Yeah, no, Paul Benowitz, yeah, he was very. I mean, they drove that dude nuts, didn't they?
Yeah, he literally went out of his mind. He had to be hospitalized because he was just so ridiculously paranoid. They had his house bugged.
Some wild stuff.
Air Force had his house bugged. NSA had his house bugged. That was set up across the street in an unmarked NSA van, and then beamed these frequencies into his house.
He was just out of what? Was it Kirtland Air Force Base? Is that where he was out of?
Yeah, it was right
outside of it.
Yeah, he was just right out. He could see Kirkland Air Force Base from the back patio of his house.
Which is a big story. That's a big. I mean, a lot of folks concentrate on like Wright Patterson for Project Blue Book and the Nazis out of Roswell and whatnot down there. The whole Roswell thing, because Roswell was obviously staffed with Nazis down there as well at that time. But a lot of that stuff gets alleged to be shipped to Wright Patterson, which seems to be record of that occurring. But Kirtland was also part of the same command, that Air Force Material Command, the weapons testing and development command of the Air Force. So that's what
they were doing at Kirkland. Yeah, they were just doing experimental aircraft, and Paul was seeing this from his backyard, and he thought that it was extraterrestrials.
Yep, and yeah, very like the upper echelon of secrecy kind of projects would have been tested there for sure.
Yep. And no one thought to go out there and drive their car up to Kirkland Air Force Base and see if this was a freaking helicopter or like some kind of drone technology and not a UFO. Like, come on, give me a break. I mean, Bill was shit. I'm blanking on his name. I've talked about him so much. Bill, he was involved with the Paul Benowitz affair. It was Richard Doty and William Moore. Bill Moore, William Moore, same thing. He pretty much blew the whistle on this entire freaking operation and was like, got up in front of a MUFON conference in 1978 and was like, listen, this whole thing, like if you strip away all of ufology down to its bare bones, like you're left with the Paul Benowitz case. Like that's what it is. And he was telling all these people on stage and at this MUFON UFO conference, and like people are like booing him off the stage. They didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to hear that this was all a big giant fabrication by the government. But
all big work.
But it's gotten to the point when it's been allowed to go on for so long that there's really no closing the lid back on this bottle.
Sure. Oh, absolutely not. No, that's a great point, because what I was going to mention here was, are you familiar with the New York Post came out with a presentation or an investigatory report over the summer saying that the Pentagon had been infiltrated by an alien religion. And,
I mean, that's what it kind of seems like. I mean, that's the Arrow report that came out of Arrow. Yep. One of the last things that they did, they were like, listen, this is like circular reporting. This is all coming from believers in this phenomenon when we have no substantial evidence that any of this stuff exists.
Yep. No, you're spot on. That's exactly what this covers, is that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and the AARO report.
And a gem to the entire thing. Like, he came out there, which is what the government's official stance has always been on UFOs. They've always said the same thing.
And the journalist that did this series, if you're not familiar with him, I believe his name's Steven Greenstreet. And
Steven Greenstreet, really great researcher. Yes. Yeah,
are you familiar with his in-depth investigation into the Skinwalker Ranch?
Yes, I am, and he also recently interviewed. He did a 2-part interview on Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick as well for the New York Post. Yes.
Okay, so you are familiar. Yep, that's part one. That's a great series. Yeah, that was the part one in that. I thought that was a.
And he's a real journalist. He's someone that really goes in there and asks the hard questions. Him, Mick West, and John Greenwald Jr. are like some of the best people in this community that actually file FOIA requests and try and get answers and not just believe what everybody says over and over and over again.
Right. Not just believe the 12-foot grays are coming to help us all out and save the gold reserves.
Yeah. That the Ascended Masters are going to come back and save us from all of our problems.
I like Steven Greenstreet, much like myself. He's an ex-Mormon, so I appreciate his skepticism surrounding the Mormon, alien business as well, especially his coverage of Skinwalker Ranch, which is full of Mormons. It seems to be a whole Mormon operation.
I think so. I mean,
I was saying, then Nick's got some strong feelings in that regard.
yeah, well, almost everybody. I mean, listen, I understand where you are, there's going to be Mormons, but everybody except for Bigelow, which I couldn't really prove, but I'm sure he might be, because there is a Bigelow name that runs all the way back to like it's Joseph Smith, I think, or at least.
No, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so like that name is in the Mormon thing, but everybody who's owned that house, Mormons.
Well, I was going to say Bigelow also made his money off of contracts from Harry
books
Reid.
on it. Mormons.
Yeah.
The people who are working over there now, half of them are Mormons. Brandon Fugel's a Mormon. The guy that his right hand man was a Mormon. What's up with all these Mormons and this UFO shit over there?
It seems related, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Utah is nothing but full of them, and also Utah is a really big place where like these behavioral teen modification camps go on as well.
Oh,
like they'll take these teens that are supposedly in trouble. Their family pays this company to come and abduct their child out of their room and basically handcuff them and throw them in the back of an SUV and then take them to Utah in the wilderness and have them hike for 3 months.
Utah pyramids
pretty wild,
illegal too.
Ryder, are you familiar with the any of the Minot UFO reports there, specifically the book "It Never Happened," Volume 1, U.S. Air Force UFO cover-up revealed?
Not familiar with that, P. Thomas.
No, I know P. Thomas has brought up to my attention before too. I'm not familiar with it either, but definitely have to look into that one because I was stationed in Mount. I'm retired Air Force, did 20 years as an MP. And my first assignment was Malmstrom Air Force Base at Great Falls. And there's a lot of UFO lore surrounding the nuclear missile sites up there.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to paint this like threat that they're a threat and that we need to, which can only be described as the reason that they would do that is so that some sort of threat could actually happen, and then it's really our technology, and then they have to defend us from our own technology with our technology, so then they can reveal that it's our technology.
And if you ask folks like
that seems to be the only way around this quagmire that's been put in with this whole UFO topic. That's really the only way around it. You stage a threat that is our own craft, and you say that we don't know what they are, and then that we have to create this craft in order to defend ourselves from this craft, and then that's the way that they basically then they defeat that enemy, and then they're like, oh, guess what? We now have all this technology when we've had it since the 50s, or we've at least been working on it since the 50s. Yeah,
it's the ISIS business model, right? You got to create the enemy to go fight the enemy.
That's right.
The thing is too that I think is interesting is like the stuff that we're seeing now that like, oh, maybe it's drones, maybe it's not. It's like, well, like I'm still sure the government has better technology than that. If we think that's a drone, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, even like the stuff that we're being handed now is like quite possibilities to blow it off. Really is high tech stuff. I have a fucking drone. You know what I'm saying? How many people have drones? Like that's not you know what I'm saying? Like I just feel like you're getting even a bullshit answer to cover up for things that is just old school technology compared to what the government has anyway.
And exactly. And you go take your drone, Nick, and go try and fly it over a military installation.
Right.
What's going to happen?
Unless you're Thomas Crooks, it's not going to be easy. He somehow flew it over restricted airspace at the July 13th, right?
Yo, if I'm close to an airport, it won't even let me lift. It'll go up.
Exactly. They're banned in a lot of areas. Like you can't use them. So, but yet these ones will just let fly around all over the place and not do anything about them. It's so reminiscent of, I'm sure you guys remember, I talked about this on my show today on Raised by Giants with Ryan Gable. It's very reminiscent of exactly what happened a year ago with the Chinese spy balloon. Do you guys remember the Chinese spy balloon stuff?
Very.
It's almost identical, and it happened in almost the exact same month, a year ago. The same thing was happening, but instead of them being drones, they were Chinese spy balloons
flying over places like Minot Air Force Base, Malmstrom Air Force Base. Same stuff they've been doing now. Because again, there's been countless reports out of Langley Air Force Base in Virginia Beach. They've been having all sorts of incursions by some sort of craft for at least a month.
You know, it's interesting. You're talking about like spy balloons, and we're talking about drones. I've always wondered. I mean, I'm sure it's possible. Who knows? But like DJI, it's kind of a common brand that everybody uses for drones because they make them underneath a weight to where you don't have to register them. So it's a lot easier just to fly your drone anywhere, really. That's all made by China. And I'm like, if there was some way for them to relay everything that we were filming, I'm like, this country is basically mapping itself for China with those drones.
Oh, it's a good theory.
Yeah, there's a lot of
3D renderings.
Yeah, well, because it's huge. Everybody uses that fucking company that I know.
Mm-hmm. You can see right here, NORAD's commander just told us about Langley Air Force drone incursions. It had been going on there for a while. This broke 2 months ago, I believe, almost 2 months ago.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring up this article right now, which is the U.S., the UK, and Australia using AI-powered drone swarms in groundbreaking military exercise, which is unbelievable. Okay, here it is. Okay, so the U.S., the UK, and Australia test AI-powered drone swarms and groundbreaking military exercise August 13th, 2024. In the significant development for drone technology, the military corporation in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia has been conducting joint exercises testing anomalous drones equipped with artificial intelligence capabilities. The trials took place over Fort Irwin, California, mark over major milestone and implications of the AUKUS defense pact between the three nations, reported by the Times. So these are essentially AI-powered drones, and they run in like clusters, and like this is like a picture of what they look like.
Sure, it's a bad week for AI for folks in AI. They got that one whistleblower. They found him dead today from OpenAI, the OpenAI whistleblower. And then the fellow that allegedly murked that United Health CEO, he was a Ivy League top honors kind of guy with computer sciences and a master's degree in AI. So,
well, you also have those people that just came out that who's the creators of the Pokemon Go app? Do you guys know about this?
Oh no, I don't. I just saw a comment about Pokemon.
Pokemon Go. I gotta type it in and try and find it.
But yeah, while you're doing that, I got a good example of those drones you were just talking about there, Ryder, as far as what they can do. And I don't know if anyone saw this, but over the summer in the city of Atlanta, they used a bunch of those drones that Ryder was just showing, and they put Steve Harvey's face over the city of Atlanta with some of those drones.
Yeah, they did this at the Super Bowl 1 year as well.
That was floating over the city of Atlanta. Could you imagine? I mean, like, you can do a lot of stuff with that kind of technology. So they want to convince folks of some wild stuff. I think it's certainly possible when you can that's a pretty clear image of Steve Harvey's face that was floating over Atlanta.
Well, there's also an article that I showed on my show today with Ryan Gable that the advertising agencies are wanting to use drone technology for advertising their company in the sky. And that's what that looks like of Steve Harvey. That would be a great advertisement in the sky. It's not just on billboards and on commercials. It's in the freaking sky now.
Yeah.
It's almost like Back to the Future where they got those billboards in the sky.
Yeah, this is the Nitonic, or how you say it. The Pokemon Go app is player data is training an AI map models. So the players of Pokemon Go may not have realized it, but they've been training more than their Pokemon. Nitonic, the developer behind the popular mobile game Pokemon Go, announced last week that it's building an AI model to map the physical world. This large geospatial model would utilize data collected from players to achieve spatial intelligence, and the company said in a blog post. Pokemon Go was first released in 2016, and it's an augmented reality game where players use their mobile phones to find and catch virtual Pokemon in the real world. The game had more than 600 million downloads since its release, blah, 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 blah. But essentially, they use this app as like a backdoor to map the entire world.
Yeah.
Titanic's model is training and processing data using geolocation information from scans players submit of the real world locations while playing Pokemon Go and other Titanic games. Always an agenda behind it. Nothing's for free.
Right. Yeah, I was just reading something about Niantic the other day. That's interesting you bring that up. I hadn't heard that Pokemon one, but that is very interesting. I'm not shocked.
Rando Nordica was doing stuff like that too.
Who?
Rando Nordica. I always wondered about that app too.
Oh, what's that one do?
I mean, it's like sent you around and like you're supposed to like, oh fuck, what was it sending you to? Oh, it would, like I think it would send you to random places that like you'd ask to try to look for. You type something in, it would send you there, and like something would be there, like it.
So yeah, I sort of remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, we covered that on the Occult Rejects because we thought it was weird, but this was like probably 3 years ago.
Yeah, this was a really long time ago. Yeah, it was pretty popular app, and then you also have like the geocaching thing too, like coordinates where
that's what I think it was doing, was geocaching.
Oh yeah, geocaching. Sure, that's very popular. Looks like some other folks know about this app.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it became popular on Reddit, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
there was a couple like YouTube accounts that blew up because I think they found like a body.
So, I remember that was another folks who found a body.
That was another thing too. I felt like around that time is where you got the whole
just find dead bodies,
ridiculous true crime shit with social media.
Yeah, no, everyone's just finding dead bodies around that time. No, you're right, because that was around the same time with that. That's the case you always tell me about. You always mention to me that I know a little bit about Kyle Rodney. Yeah, there we go, Kyle Rodney, or Kylie Rodney.
Yeah, whatever his name is.
Yeah, one of those things. Yeah, no, that's a good point for sure.
Yeah, wasn't there like a crime or a true crime case that was also like supposedly gained evidence from using Google Earth or something like that?
Gabby Petito.
It might have been. I'm not 100% sure.
I think she was the one that her boyfriend threw off a cliff or something like that. Maybe I could be mistaking the cause of death, but yeah, she disappeared with her boyfriend or something like that.
Yeah, so it's like the internet can find so many different things, dude. It's wild, but we can't know what these freaking drones are or where they're from when they've been in our airspace for a really long time. But we can find out unsolved murders on the internet.
Do you think that makes you wonder more if it's actually our own governments because they're not giving us an excuse what it is because it's their shit?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like we just don't want to give you a reason why because it's ours.
Yep, and we're running some sort of operation just like the Chinese spy balloons. Like there was no repercussions on China for having those spy balloons just roaming around the United States for weeks on end before they were shot down.
Sure.
So it's like, and it could work the opposite way too. It could be our technology, and then something happens because I'm pretty sure that people are going to start shooting them now. They're like random people are going to bring out their guns and they're going to start shooting these drones. Mark my words, it's going to happen 100%.
Told everybody to
shooting mortars up and possibly take a few out if you had decent fucking fireworks.
Trump posted on True Social tonight: if the government's not going to identify them, get out your guns, start shooting.
No way, he really said that.
He did say absolutely.
Oh my god!
I'll pull up the exact statement. I was cracking up.
No.
Because as soon as you said that, you're going to start. That's exactly what people are going to do. Especially if you tell them to do it, they're like, "Yeah, I'm going to start shooting stuff."
Oh man,
that's what they did with the Chinese spy balloon. I'm pretty sure that there was some people in like Wyoming or Nebraska or something like that was also shooting at the Chinese spy balloon because the government wouldn't take it down. So I mean, that's just it's a reoccurring thing. So why would people not start? Yeah, why would they not just start shooting bullets in the air at these drones?
Yep, for sure.
That's the experiment. That's what they would be doing, right? Like, what? How can we? What will people do if we don't give them the proper type of information? Like, are they going to go rogue on us, or are they going to stay calm about it and let us handle the situation?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think, and I want to kind of touch on that exact point here in a moment when we pull up this your post, or True Social post that got put on Twixter here. Donald Trump, mystery drone sightings all over the country. Can this really be happening without our government's knowledge? Obviously not. There's a lot of misspellings here. I don't, but I think it says I don't. I don't think so. let the public know, and now otherwise shot them down, shoot them down, I believe is what he meant, DJT. So yeah, I think they're absolutely going to start just popping those things off.
Wow, they're going to start shooting at these drones. I bet you, as soon as we're done with this conversation, the AI, our social media algorithms will pick up this conversation on my phone. As soon as we're done with this, I'll see a video on X or on Facebook of people shooting at drones. I'm willing to bet.
I expect nothing less, especially out of folks like Montana and North Dakota.
That's bugged out.
Popping stuff off.
Oh God, yeah.
I think a lot of the secrecy, though, is surrounded in this subject matter because it intersects with, not with just the occult, but also with the occult and politics. And I often use the example of John Podesta as this example because he's so prominent in the alien conversation, perpetrating a lot of these ideas on Ancient Aliens television show on the History Channel. But he's also seemingly an occultist with things like the WikiLeaks email. He's being asked for things such as a thelemic favor from the Yale University librarian. So seemingly they have an understanding of what that term thelemic means. That thelemic favor happened to be a private meeting with Barack Obama, which the guy was asking for because Podesta was Obama's top guy, counselor, or whatever you want to call him, overlord, dark Sith overlord, as I like to phrase it. But yeah, I mean,
you just brought up Obama, bro, and I told you I did not want to go in the Obama direction.
we won't go down that path. We won't go down that path. But with John Podesta, he's one of the forefront of like things like the season premieres of Ancient Aliens, right? Like, I think it's something along those lines of characters like that seemingly put the stop, in any of this information or any of this discussion or any honest, objective discussion on the matter.
Yeah, and that's where the cargo cults really come in. One of the cargo cults out of during the Vietnam War was this cult of John Frum, where these Vietnam soldiers went to this remote island in the Congo and would bring in these supplies to people and goods and stuff, and like they had never seen anything like that in their civilization. They'd never seen an airplane. They'd never seen a helicopter. So essentially these people thought that these American soldiers that was bringing them the food and supplies and stuff and landing in their magical flying machines were gods. So they created this cult called the Cult of John Frum, and John Frum because the military personnel that showed up, his name was John. Right. And then they started modeling their entire civilization like around these soldiers, which they didn't know that they were American soldiers. And they started making these helicopters and these planes and stuff.
Oh, I think I heard about that. They started mimicking like some of the stuff they showed up in.
Out of like hay.
Oh, yeah.
And
just
trees
like
and sticks
or whatever they had.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and they make up entire religions or like entire concepts of society around it, not just the religious aspect, but the entire society is built around that premise.
That's right, and there's still people that are that are waiting for John Frum to return back to the Congo to bring them supplies. They have like a statue that they made of like John Frum and all this. It's wild.
Yeah, so yeah, this is a good comment here about Podesta with the Abramovich spirit cooking stuff. Yeah, I mean, he's just such a prolific character, and to see him at the forefront of pushing a lot of these ideas on mainstream television shows like Ancient Aliens, and then it's my understanding he's actually the one who was kind of at the forefront of redefining the term UFO into UAP. That was kind of the work of Podesta, from my understanding.
And Hillary Clinton. Yeah,
I was gonna say Hillary Clinton. I thought it was.
Well, he was serving as her campaign chairman and top
advisor.
Well. So whenever Vince Foster died, old Johnny Boy, he decided to position himself deeper within the Clinton machine of the legal counsel of the White House. He's the one who developed the Vince Foster cover up. Him and Susan Rice. They both started a war room to cover that up. So he's been the Clintons. He's had his hand up Bill's butt, making his mouth move puppet style since around 1994. So he's very deep in that whole machine for sure. And I think, in my opinion, especially from the years I spent there, those fellas run DC. I think the Washington Post ran something to that effect too, where John and Tony Podesta were the most powerful brothers since Kennedy in D.C. So this dude seems to be very, very much in the seat of control with a lot of these current concepts of aliens and UFOs and this discussion surrounding any sort of declassifications.
I always get Abramovic confused with Abramovich, because you got Marina Abramovich from Nazi Germany that was like a channeler, and then you have, what is her first name? Abramovic, Maria Abramovic.
Oh yeah, I know.
Spirit cooker.
Yeah,
they're like they it's like what we were talking about with Dave Grush and Dave Crush. It's like the same thing.
She was a Nazi mystic, huh?
Yeah, Nick, I'm sure. Do you know about her, Marina Abramovic?
The spirit cooking one, I know.
Not the spirit cooking one. But
no, I didn't know the other one. No, not at all.
Yeah, she was supposedly a channeler that would channel these entities, kind of supposedly the same entities that who were some of the first that channeled the Enochian angels.
John D.
Supposedly she was channeling some of these same entities that John D was supposedly channeling as well, and then they like gave her like the schematics to create a spaceship, and then she like disappeared supposedly.
Wow.
And this was like during World War II, well before World War II in Germany.
I'm gonna have to read more into that one. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
The comment there about the Comet Pizza, Nick and I were recently discussing this relative to that situation, because it seems like that whole situation relative again to the Podestas, because this was a big John and Tony Podesta hangout. They had birthday parties there and stuff like that. Just the sign seems to scream to me that there's an occult nature to it, right? With the symbols on the sign, like, you know, obviously it's a star and the moon and it's called Comet, but I mean the whole mix of it just seems very occult to me.
Wasn't there some kind of comet thing in Toy Story as well?
Oh, I'm not sure of. The first thing that comes to mind when I think of Comet is the purple robe and black Nikes of the Heaven's Gate in the Halley's Comet.
Yeah,
right. I think there's some kind of something like that in Toy Story as well, but I could be mistaken. I haven't watched Toy Story in a really long time, but it might be just on the front of my mind because of the Toy Story connection to The Shining and Stanley Kubrick and the new documentary.
There's a comment here, Comet Pizza in Toy Story. So yeah,
there you go.
I'm not sure I've ever seen it, but yeah, that's interesting. I'll check that out too. Yeah, well, Nick stepped away for a second. I was gonna say, Nick and I recently, Nick was on a tour of DC before I recently moved away from DC a number of months ago, but I had been living there, and I was stationed there for like six and a half years, my military career. So I, very much have called DC home for a number of years. So I took Nick on a tour when he came down through DC, filming some of the more the older and occult sites around town, like the Scottish Rite temple there, the 33-degree temple, places like that. But we stopped by Comet Pizza, and Nick made a new friend out front. If he was here, he'd fill in this story. But yeah, it's I've always thought the whole relationship with this situation being like almost like an occult ritual meeting place for some of these folks like the Podestas. Again, I like to attribute a lot of nefarious activities to the Podesta brothers, because I think, again, they're very prolific. They're involved with everything, it seems. Because speaking of these aliens and the occult, right? You have Peter Levenda, who seems to be at an intersection of that activity. David Brock seems to be creepy too, Alefantis' buddy. But yeah, Podesta and Alefantis, they go, or Podesta and Alefantis, Podesta and Levenda, they go way back. Back to the late 70s, early 80s. So they have a long history with one another. So I just find it very odd that they have that long history. They're both seemingly involved in the aliens and the occult. And they're here they are in our current era, pushing it with Tom DeLonge, the Freemason from Blink-182, working with him into the Stars Academy, pushing out all these ideas, meeting with John Podesta at the White House, right? Peter Levenda and Tom DeLonge. It just all seems this is the kind of the epicenter of activity, why we're asking the question, not getting any answers as a society, generally speaking, is not getting answers on what the hell's going on with all these weird things going on in the sky.
Well, really what I've discovered is that you can literally boil everything down to the aliens are an excuse for crimes against humanity and the things that we're doing to our own people. Literally everything that has been blamed on extraterrestrial involvement, we've been doing to ourselves.
Right.
And it's a perfect cover up, because then that means that they these people in high up places don't have to take responsibility for anything that they do, because the ufology and the alien narrative will reign supreme. It'll be it's aliens did that.
Yep.
Aliens were the ones that were messing with your genetics. Aliens were the ones that were changing your DNA.
Yep.
Right? Wasn't us. We didn't do it.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, it shifts the liability.
Mm-hmm.
It's the major. That's the primary function, at least of the U.S. government, is shifting liability. Everything else comes secondary.
Yeah,
liability shifting number one. We're never at fault.
Wow. Never. And they'll obfuscate it. They'll create stories and theories and run psychological operations on people to change the narrative, to shift the blame away from them at all costs, at any cost.
Yeah. As you pointed out, they'll create computer systems and invent software to convince people that aliens are talking to them for no other reason, just to see how that guy's going to react. It seems like that was part of the issue. He was obviously sending out that information to other parties, but it's part of it seemed to almost be a game where like wanted to see what they could do to that Paul Benowitz guy by.
Oh, absolutely. And that was like the whole thing, because Paul Benowitz also worked for the Air Force. He was a radio technician for the Air Force. So he had like a duty to keep his secrecy, that's how they got him in the beginning. They were like, listen, Paul, we don't, the footage that you have and the pictures that you have of supposed extraterrestrials and UFOs, it's very interesting. See, they didn't confirm or deny, just exactly like what they're doing with this drone stuff. They're not saying what it is. They're neither confirming or denying the entire thing. And then that pushes Paul Benowitz to think that, he must be on to something, because they're not telling me that it's not extraterrestrials. They're not telling me that it's not UFOs. So I must be on to something.
Right.
Well, then in the beginning, they were
the implication they convinced him of, right?
Exactly. Without telling him one way or the other.
Right.
Because that's how the human brain,
that's a mind fuck.
Mind. Yeah, it's a huge mind. But that's how it's done. That's the way that they do it, and it's so subtle that it's very difficult to even recognize when and how it's actually being done. But it's so freaking sophisticated that it takes a really sharp mind and a sharp, intellectual mind to really discover exactly what's going on. And that's the way and you can apply that narrative in that situation with Paul Benowitz and the NSA and the Air Force and what they were doing to him to almost every other topic in every other discussion, and relate that exact same thing, and you pretty much understand everything at that point.
I think that's a fair assessment and summary. I think you've articulated that well, Ryder. I appreciate that. It's some good stuff, and I appreciate your time here. We'll be wrapping things up here. I'll give you a moment here to plug anything you got. I know you got a new movie out that I recently heard about and looking forward to checking out. But Nick, you stepped out for a moment. I wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe share with Ryder your story of the friend you met there at Comet Pizza.
Oh God. So me and JJ, we're walking around DC. I think we went over there maybe to go walk past it and actually take a look at Comet. Yeah. And so like we're walking up the side of the road before you make a left to start heading towards the place. And like you see, it was like some hairy ass big dude, like in I don't know, was he wearing like a tutu or some shit?
Yeah, it was like I don't know, 250-pound dude, like a tutu.
Yeah. Yeah, and like we're walking up
5
and
in the afternoon.
Yeah, he's like, pick a number from 1 to 3. I don't know, for some reason I entertained this motherfucker or some shit. And I'm like, I just want to hear I'm thinking I want to hear what dumb shit this thing says to me. And And I said 2. And then like it goes to like pull out. It looks like you're pulling out a planner or a fucking like calendar or some shit. And I'm
Right.
like, oh no, come on, now you're like
You got
dragging.
sucked in.
Yeah. He pulls it out. She's like, all right, so now Pick and JJ's like, yo, I ain't got time for that.
Yeah, I'm out of here.
Get out of here with that. It's some shit like that. You got to get out of
I'm
here.
halfway down the block.
Yeah, it gets on. It's like little motorized, like I don't know what the fuck was that. It was like
one of those little scooters, you run
yeah,
around
but only
with.
like one wheel on the front and back.
Oh, it was janky. It was janky.
Yeah, it just like takes off like all upset. I'm like, what the fuck just happened?
He wasn't happy. I mean, I stepped out the side to watch him go by on the sidewalk, and he'd look pissed.
I was like, why does this happen right at the corner of Comet Ping Pong?
Right.
Some characters out there, bro.
Yeah.
Well, Ryder, I appreciate your time, bud. It's a great conversation. Definitely we'll have to, have to reconvene at some point in the future, talk some more alien psyops and cargo cult business. I'm sure we've only scratched the surface. You've definitely left me with a number of topics to check out. But before we go here, I know you got a new movie you just released. Anything else you're working on you want to plug?
Just my show, Raised by Giants, on YouTube and any and all podcast platforms. And if you would like to watch my latest documentary, it's on Amazon Prime and Apple TV Plus, called A Clockwork Shining, Kubrick's Odyssey 3. Has me, Jay Widener, Mark Devlin, Kathy O'Brien, Joe Atwell, and Walter Bosley in the film.
Quite a lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah, please, if you would like to, if you're not interested in Kubrick or his work, or if you don't like The Shining or whatever, it won't matter. There's so many other topics that we dive into in there. It's not only about The Shining and Stanley Kubrick. It's about the music industry. It's about the film industry. It's about, clandestine intelligence operations. So I think that you guys will really enjoy it. I think I'm going to be on Nick's show here soon talking about it. So.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome. I know. I look forward. I just heard about it recently. I look forward to checking that out.
Yeah, that's another thing I will say. I have actually learned a few facts or things that I never knew before about other things just from like seeing some of your stuff. You know what I'm saying? That had nothing to do totally really with the topic. It was just like other random things that you kind of talked about. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that. Like Kubrick and Lord of the Rings. I never fucking
say Nazi mystics that
you know what I'm saying? Like it was just like here, like random things that you're like, So that I would say, like, just trying to promote his stuff. Besides Kubrick and that, there is a lot of other little informational gems in there from what I've seen so far.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate that. Yeah, Kubrick was all over the place. All the Beatles symbolism within The Shining. He was going to film J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, and the Beatles were going to be the Hobbits in the movie. Like, it's crazy thing.
Really?
Crazy stuff. Yeah. And then Stephen King got the idea of the title of The Shining from a John Lennon song, Instant Karma. Like, dude, there's so much.
That's why I didn't know that.
Yeah.
See, that helps you.
I got a question for you real quick there on the topic. Oh, go ahead, Nick. What were you saying?
I said sometimes I think when you see that, it helps also give people like an idea of a mindset that he might have been in as well. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Get an idea of like his way of thinking. You start seeing stuff like that.
He's pretty deep, that's for sure. Yeah. So did you come? Just one question for you there, Ryder, on your Kubrick stuff. I'm definitely gonna check out your movie. It sounds even more intriguing now with the Beatles connections. Because what I was thinking there was, did you come across anything with Kubrick and Scientology relative to tonight's discussion?
Well,
I know his daughter was a big Scientologist, and he obviously, at least employed crews there, and at least one Scientologist. I would argue a couple more, but
it is possible, and is also possible that Kubrick had heavy Masonic, Freemason ties as well through all the symbolism in his movies. I mean, the poster for freaking Clockwork Orange is Alex, and the center of the pyramid, the top of the pyramid, is All-Seeing Eye, which is Alex's watch. Like, there's a 7-pointed stars and Eyes Wide Shut, which we know 7-pointed stars is, the sigil for Lucifer, and then Lucifer being the morning star and also related to Venus. Like, there's so many different Freemasonic symbolism that Kubrick was showing in all of his movies, especially in Eyes Wide Shut. And just the symbolism that he puts in there makes you question if he how much he knew about this and how much was he involved in all this stuff. And so yeah, please check out the movie, and if you like it, please leave a rating and a review as well on The Clockwork Shining on Amazon Prime. And if you don't like Amazon Prime, then you can get Apple TV Plus and watch it on there as well.
Nice. And is that on your link tree? If not,
It's not on my link tree. I haven't updated the link tree yet, but if you just typed in A Clockwork Shining or Kubrick's Odyssey 3 into Amazon Prime Video or Apple TV, or just into Google itself, it'll be the first thing that pops up, and you can click on it and help supporting me and watching my movie. It really helps me do more things in the future. So thanks for having me on, gentlemen. Really appreciate it. It was a lovely conversation. Thanks for being here, Nick. I'll be seeing you soon on your show.
Yes, definitely will.
For talking about the movie.
Absolutely, and I'll put a link to your documentary, your new Amazon Prime documentary into the show notes as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll send
appreciate
you a link
time, Ryder. Awesome conversation. Look forward to the future. Nick, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
No, just real quick. The Occult Rejects available on all major podcast hosts and BitChute, Rumble, and YouTube. That's it.
Nice.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you, JJ, and it's always good to talk to you, my man, as well. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Well, that's it. That's the show here, folks. So the next time you're out on the town, visiting your local watering holes, or perhaps just meandering around, and you hear the unmistakable sounds of metal clanking, and you spot signs of a disturbance, but check your six. Look in that garbage can, because you never can tell. The GCDs may be loose in your town.